Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I'm Stephen Bertoni, live from the NASDAQ market site. And today we have David Jones, who is the founder and CEO of the Brandtech Group, also an author, an activist, and he took a city bike here. So he's an environmentalist too. So David, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here.
So you sit on the forefront of advertising, branding, but also generative AI.
Yep.
You were talking about this stuff not last month, not last year, 2015, before AI was the buzzword of everything. Set the table for me. What are we seeing right now?
So look, I think you're just seeing an explosion in generative AI all over the world, and I think it's going to be the biggest revolution and change that we see, not just in marketing, but in business. And there's a few reasons for that. You know, firstly, you have every major global CEO of any of the tech platforms saying this is going to change the world and we're going to spend billions to make sure it does. Secondly, you're seeing investors, saying this is the future. So whether it's Nvidia going, past 2 trillion, or Microsoft going past Apple, depending on the day, on the back of AI. Thirdly, you're seeing the world's people saying it's amazing. I mean, ChatGPT was the fastest technology in history to get to 100 million users. And I think fourthly, it's amazing, I mean, if you play around with any of the tools, what it does isn't remarkable, but how it does it is absolutely remarkable. So, humans today can probably still create better content than Gen AI and machines. It's just you can't do it in 60 seconds.
Wow.
But the thing I would kind of package all of that under, however, is, I have no doubt that we're going to see just enormous change. But today, if you're particularly talking about the advertising business, about 100% of the headlines are around generative AI, but still less than 1% of the content is created using generative AI. Now that's going to change, but we're very much at the start of it.
Wow, and you guys recently at Brandtech raised about $112 million.
115, yeah.
$115 million American,
yes.
At a $4 billion valuation as a advertising technology company. And I have to admit, I'm surrounded by advertising like everyone all day long. I'm in media, so advertising keeps the lights on and pays my salary.
Yeah.
But I don't really understand how the business works. Tell me what you guys do on a Monday morning.
So basically, probably the easiest way to describe it is we have a platform called Pencil, which is an end-to-end platform for creating advertising. So on the one side, it plugs into all of the models, so from ChatGPT to Gemini to Stability, but also some of the databases like Getty. So that's kind of on the left, which is what feeds in. And then here on the right, it plugs directly into the advertising accounts of Instagram and Facebook and TikTok for a brand. And then the platform sits in the middle, and you arrive on the platform, and very simply, you can decide what you want to do. So do you want to make a video for TikTok? Do you want to make a post for Instagram? Do you actually just want some consumer insights? Do you want to create a pack shot? And it's a workflow that takes you through that entire process, and at each step, it gives you a prediction, because it's sort of been in market since 2018. We've made over 1 million ads using generative AI, spent $1 billion of media through the platform.
You've made 1 million ads?
1 million Gen AI ads since 2018. And that allows us to predict how we think a particular piece of content is going to perform. And so literally you just go through the process. You start with insights, you then start with what images do you want to create, start with some headlines. It works off templates, and then you can literally publish those if you want to direct to the social media platforms, and you get live data back on how you're doing. Wow. So what it does is there's nothing remarkable about what it does. It's just to be able to do that in one place, which as each of the Gen AI models gets better, it gets better to give you predictions and to get data back. So it's just exploding.
When you say like 1 million ads, is it going to be, are these custom, like let's say Forbes is using Pencil and we're trying to sell subscriptions or memberships. Will a Forbes ad served to you be different than to me? Like, are there all these iterations, or are they kind of A/B testing what works or what doesn't work?
I mean, the thing about it is it's gone from almost A/B testing to A to Z testing, because the size and scale that you can now create content at. So you can literally just pull down, and create limitless feed variations. So if you literally wanted to have 150 different target audiences and segments, it can instantaneously create the content for you for that. And one of the most, it's like not necessarily that impressive, it's just impressive to watch, is when you just ask it to translate immediately into any language all of your content. And it's that speed which is really remarkable. And over, since 2018, we've been able to prove that we can make the content 10 times faster, we can make it perform twice as effectively, and we can do it for about half the cost.
Give me an example of a campaign recently done through Pencil or done through Brandtech.
So, I mean, literally, there's literally thousands of ads on Instagram, on TikTok, and it's typically that social content, so social and digital. It's not yet, and we can come on to talking about this, it's not yet getting in, Pencil isn't yet getting into the TV side, but it's particularly good around e-commerce, around performance marketing, around social, and we're working today with 50% of our top 20 clients in the space.
You've been in advertising all your life. You're like the youngest advertising CEO ever, I think.
I was once young, yes.
Still young. So this was the 90s, correct?
When
you first started?
Yeah, exactly.
It's insane to think that you started this before really the internet, before mobile, before digital, before influencers. Like, how has what you did years ago and then fast forward today, how has that changed?
So look, I launched Australia's first ever internet agency in 1998. And I think we look at today and we think it's always been like it is today, and we think it will always be like it is today, and those two things are never true. And literally, when we launched Australia's first internet agency, we honestly never thought you'd watch a video on a computer. Now if you can't stream Netflix up in the air flying over the Atlantic, you're annoyed.
Yeah.
If the Wi-Fi's down in a plane, it's like, what?
Yeah, you're sending complaints to the airline.
Where 15 years ago, if someone had said to you, you'll have really high performance Wi-Fi in a plane and you can stream videos on your mobile phone, you'd say, don't be stupid. And I think it's exactly the same thing. I mean, there is not a single thing that humans do that cannot be done better, faster, and cheaper using generative AI. And that's already. And if you think about just the progress that the tools have made, if I look at Pencil, when Pencil launched in 2018, 1 in 10,000 ads, you could use. Today it's 10 out of 10. And that's where we are. Just imagine where we're going to be in 12 months. If you take a tool like Midjourney, in 2022, if you ask Midjourney to create an image of a woman, it was pretty terrible. It had 7 fingers. It didn't really, 23 was not bad. 24, it's exceptional. ChatGPT failed. ChatGPT 3 failed the New York bar exam in 2022, passed in the 90th percentile in 2023. So you've got all of these companies spending billions to make this better and better. And so the speed of progress is huge. And a few people have said, that expression that we always massively overestimate the change we're going to see in 2 years and underestimate 10 years. I think maybe not this time. I think maybe in the next 2 years we're going to see pretty remarkable change.
So this big 10x we're seeing, what does that mean for 3 stakeholders? What does that mean, for people in advertising that used to make this, write this? What does that mean for brands? And then what does this mean for consumers like me, who's the ultimate target, frankly, of all this? Where are we going? You said, 2 years ago, ChatGPT failed the bar exam. Now it's just, it's excelling. It's the rate of change is exponential and so fast. Where are we going?
So look, I think for brands, it's fantastic because you are able to create your content better, faster, and cheaper. And so, it's going to basically be an amazingly powerful and significant impact in marketing and advertising. I think for, creative people and people in the industry, the kind of the saying that it's not Gen AI that's going to take your job, but that someone that is using it. I think we're going to see the greatest creative revolution in history. If you look at what the mobile phone did, it turned every single person into a content creator. Like, people now get up and create content who never would have thought of creating content before. Generative AI turns every single person into an advertising agency. So there are 60 million people today employed.
Is that good for the world?
Well, maybe not, but we'll see.
Yes.
But 60 million people work in the creator economy today, and pretty much the same number of people work in the traditional advertising industry. Those jobs only exist because of the mobile phone. So I think we're going to see, and the reason we called Pencil is we believe that it's a tool for humans to use, not a replacement. And then what does it mean for individuals and people? I mean, some of the things that digital advertising and marketing have done with technology are terrible. Like, we'd buy a pair of sneakers and then it would follow us around the internet for a week. Now, firstly, that's really annoying because I know you're following me. Yeah. And secondly, I'm the last person who's going to buy that again. And so, we've done some, when I say we, not us, but the industry has done some really, really dumb things. But I think the potential for AI to actually create, a much better, more targeted and more personalized. So we talk a lot about hyper-personalization. People that hate brands, they just aren't interested in some brands than they are in others. And they don't hate advertising, they just don't want annoying,
yes.
Bad, poor advertising. And if we get into the world that I think we'll be able to get into, a world of hyper-personalization, where you're going to be able to understand much more about people and target them based on what they're genuinely interested in, you can almost head to sort of the perfect market where, brands aren't spending a bunch of money annoying people, platforms aren't creating big platforms that annoy people, and as an individual, you're actually only seeing things that you're interested in or would be interested in.
Wow. I have a question with advertising and media. So, the news media is it's in a paradox. I think I'm pretty sure that people have never read more in their lives and never read more news in the history of humankind. At the same time, the model's broken. Just look at what's happening to legacy media, layoffs, startups are failing, people are moving away from free digital advertising to memberships. I could go on for hours. What does this mean for media? And could this be a positive change, or is this going to be another, big hurdle for traditional news media to, get around?
So look, I think, if we fast forward 10 years, I think there'll be way more content, and I think we will look back on 2024 and go, do you remember when it was so easy, in exactly the same way as we look back to the old TV world and kind of remember it. So I think the rule of history is that there will be more and more content. But I think hopefully generative AI and AI will allow us to make much more sense of that content, and whether that's us as individuals or us as companies. And I'm not sure if you saw Satya Nadella's annual letter to the Microsoft shareholders. He kind of said, and I'll paraphrase it, but we've spent decades organizing data into databases, but the one thing that's been missing is the ability to kind of reason and have intelligence over that data. And I think that's where we're going to get to. To be honest, I actually think generative AI is fairly neutral in terms of its impact on media. I think a much bigger disruption was the arrival of social media, was the explosion of mobile phones, because literally everybody went from, reading a newspaper every day and sitting in front of a television to, 90% of their time spent on a device they have in their pocket. And I think that was an enormous disruption for the media industry to cope with. I think Gen AI is going to be much more neutral and will actually enable any business, no matter what you're doing, and potentially, and particularly if they adopt it super early and look at, well, how do we get ahead through Gen AI, it could be a real positive.
If you and I were, let's take a time machine way back. If you and I were 18 years old right now, in university, hoping to get into the creative worlds of marketing, advertising, you name it, what do you think we're doing in 4 years? What's our skill sets? Like what should people looking for a future in any kind of content creation, what skills do they need and what do you see them doing?
So look, I think one of the most important skills today, as with any tool, it's the ability to prompt and to use the tools. So I think a lot of people sort of look at it as if this is going to like remove everyone's job, and I think that's highly unlikely. It actually enhances humans because you can do so much more. And we created a brand in under an hour, end-to-end, everything from the name, the product design, the logo, e-commerce assets, the business plan, the press release. And so,
what was the brand?
It's going to be announced, so
okay.
I can't tell you. It's basically a cat brand that gives money. It's a not-for-profit, and all of the money goes to putting girls into education. But we literally built the entire thing end-to-end in 59 minutes.
Okay.
And I think when you have that kind of potential, actually the ability to decide and to choose becomes much more important than the ability to create, because you can create, you almost have infinite creativity, and so I would say much more about the prompting. So what are the prompting skills you need? If you put a poor prompt into a model, it will give you a poor outcome. If you put a great prompt into a model, it will give you a great outcome. So I think in the short term, prompting super interesting, but honestly, the advice I would give people is sort of, I give them two pieces of advice. Number one, it actually doesn't matter so much what you're doing, just be in that industry. It's a bit like getting into anything in and around social media or anything in and around the internet. And the second one is just make sure that you're playing and learning and experimenting yourself.
What role with this, you said it's a tool. What role do humans will have in the process of creating this copy, this advertising, and what do we all have to watch out for? Because there's obviously risks when you're creating content, targeting, you name it? Like, what should we be cognizant of, and where do humans sit in this kind of this timeline of coming up with a brand with the help of social media, I mean, with the help of generative AI, and then letting it go wild in the public? Yeah,
look, I think as a few people have said, making predictions is hard, especially about the future. If you ask me where I think the future of the industry plays out, I think 70% of it is going to be very much how the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ or any of the kind of stock markets of the world play out today, where it's all automated. So I don't think you'll have humans in the loop. I think you'll have humans outside of the loop, and it will be set up to connect content, data, and media in real time. It will optimize, it will change, it will reserve content, it will create content. And in much the same way, you were in that world. There used to be people sitting on trading room floors with bits of paper and phones and running around, and no one does that anymore. But there's still a lot of people employed and doing very well in the finance industry. So I think about 70% of that is probably fully automated. And 30% will be high quality, high human involvement. I mean, we did a TV commercial in the UK for a brand called Hotel Chocolat. And it's all created through generative AI. And it was actually one of the most effective TV commercials in Great Britain last year. And so the ability to create content now using generative
AI. It was a TV commercial and
TV commercial. It was ranked, it was ranked #1 in the confectionery category ahead of anyone else, and I think it was like the #8 most effective TV.
Was it like a cartoon?
No, not absolutely. It's basically Hotel Chocolat is as the name says on the tin, they make amazing hot chocolate and chocolate. And no,
so it's not like a hotel made of chocolate.
No, it basically takes you through the whole journey of seeing the product and gorgeous chocolate and all the imagery. And it's pretty remarkable. And I think you're going to see that become the norm rather than become an exception.
You got into this world in 2015. I mean, got into AI is going to be the future of advertising. Yeah. That was so early on. What kind of gave you the confidence to be like, I'm going to go all in on this technology that no one was talking about? We're talking like 6 years before when ChatGPT kind of rocked the world and got the most downloads. This was almost like science fiction. What was the kind of beacon that got you into this?
I think I've spent my career sort of seeing things come along and seeing lots of people be cynical and then seeing it become huge. So, whether it was internet in 1998 or mobile in 2011. I wrote a book on purpose back then, and then you see how something like that goes from being dismissed becomes really massive and mainstream. And I think just the potential that it had, and that doesn't mean to say that it necessarily happens quickly, but we invested in AI chatbots in 2015. We created the world's first AI chatbot for an influencer, for Kalani Hilliker.
What was that like? What was the chatbot like in 2015?
And I think this is the point. It's like if you stayed in kind of specific guardrails, it was really good. But once you moved out of that, we invested in a company called AI Foundation, who built digital humans, and they created Digital Deepak, and he went on Jimmy Kimmel, and he led a guided meditation, and it's fantastic.
But this is Deepak Chopra.
Yeah, but back then, this was probably 2018. Once you got a little bit outside of what the AI was comfortable with, it kind of went spiral. We built my mind twin, and it was in a meeting with one of our clients who asked them, who asked me what my purpose was, and instead of talking about a proper purpose, it said my purpose in life was to have fun. But I think you've seen, whether it's AI data or AI media planning, you've seen all of these things make enormous progress.
Yeah, for the Forbes, our 100th anniversary issue, we had Warren Buffett on the cover holding the first issue of Forbes, and it was, remember AR, augmented reality? If you held your phone up, it came alive, you could ask Warren questions, but again, he could only answer a very tight swim lane of questions. He wouldn't tell you the purpose of life, kind of.
But I think so because we've been investing in the space since 2015 and learned a ton of lessons, seen what worked, seen what didn't work, and I was always looking for a platform that could do end-to-end advertising using Gen AI, and that's when met, Pencil and Will, who'd founded the company in 2018, and brought him into the fold. But I think we always look at the new technologies and are quite dismissive of them. It's sort of human nature. We don't like change. If we look at it, we think it's actually going to be a really bad thing, not a really good thing. If you look in human history, every time humans have had great technology, and I use technology in the broadest sense, whether it's the wheel, fire, the printing press, and most recently the mobile phone, we've done amazing things with it. And I have no doubt it will be the same. There are clearly some issues that come with it, but I think overall it has an enormous potential to be a massive positive for humanity.
When you come across a new technology, or a new paradigm, if you will, do you have like a certain checklist or way of thinking about things where you're not, because you've been right about a lot of things throughout your career. Do you have a way to be like, obviously not fearful, but also not over exuberant?
Yeah.
Is there like, what is get me in your head, because you've picked a lot of winners, and you've seen where the media world is going for a long time, like around corners, as a cliche goes. What is kind of your way of thinking? So you're not dismissive, but you're also not like
naively optimistic.
Yes, yeah.
Look, I think it's a couple of pretty simple things. I mean, we have one set of criteria in terms of when we're looking at investing, but when it comes at looking at technology in general, I think it's actually just using common sense and going, do I think people are going to use this, do this? And so that's really like the common sense radar. I think there's a second one, which is this pretty frictionless? We were very early investors in Niantic, who created Pokemon Go. And at the time, John, the founder, said that he thought AR would be bigger than VR because everyone had a device. Yeah. And nobody thought that at the time. Back in 2015, everyone was on the VR train. And he was right. Everyone had the device. They created a really simple game, and the world played it.
Yeah.
So, secondly, is it kind of simple and frictionless? And I think thirdly is, how quickly can this change? And if this changes, how big could it be? So if you look at all of the headsets that are coming out today, they're making a lot of progress. But if you fast forward and imagine every single person on the planet could have a pair of glasses that can be normal, that can be augmented reality, and that can be virtual reality, and they're absolutely seamless, and they're not that expensive. Do we think the world would wear them? And probably it would replace the mobile phone? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now, if it's super heavy and uncomfortable,
it costs $3,000,
and you feel a bit sick,
you look frankly nerdy.
But don't forget, like mobile phones, there was a thing called Iridium, which was this giant satellite phone that worked all over the world and cost about $120,000. And then obviously we all have one of those in our pocket now, and it doesn't cost $120,000. And so I think that's the thing. I think we underestimate just how good this is going to get. And I think we will no doubt do it again with generative AI, but it's sort of been the barometer for my career, which is like, don't be stupidly naive and think we're going to make 100% of our revenue in this year. But actually, if the technology evolves, is this something that could be completely game-changing? Absolutely.
I know you're an expert and you live in the worlds of advertising and branding. What does this jump mean for journalism, for novels, for music, for movies? What do you see the change coming? Do you see this as advertising as an early on thing, and then is this going to spread to everything?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting about it, usually new technologies, the kind of, the first use case or best use case isn't content and advertising, and with generative AI it is. But I think the most important thing to understand about it is it's a horizontal, not a vertical. So pretty much every other thing that's come, like social media is a vertical, e-commerce a vertical, metaverse a vertical, whereas this is a horizontal. And what that means is there's nothing that anyone in any industry does today that they can't do better, faster, and cheaper, help with generative AI. And if you just play around a little bit, literally from, what are the 10 questions you want to ask me, based on everything I've said publicly for the last 10 years, you may not love exactly what it gives you, but I guarantee there'll be 3 or 4 on there for you, which you actually think are quite good. And one of my clients phoned me the other Sunday and sort of said, David, you say this phrase a lot. I've got a big presentation to investors this week. I'd love you to, just give me some content. And I spent about an hour putting some stuff together. But I also then just did a quick prompt and said, hey, give me, answer this for me. And honestly, I mean, the two together was a great combination. But what I got from ChatGPT, I could have just sent that and they would have been really pleased. And I think you've got to get into this, well, was the hour I spent on a Sunday worth the extra versus doing that? But there's nothing that you can't get help with, which is why I think it's going to be so game-changing.
This is moving so fast, the whole AI world, generative AI world, the whole content world. How do you stay up on, how do you stay current on everything? How do you know, what do you read, where do you get like your best insights about this like ever-changing world, ever-changing AI world?
So I think the first thing is you can't. We're literally in a space.
Are you a tech person? I know you're a tech person, but are you technical?
No, I think I I understand how people will use technology rather than how to build technology. So I've got a good radar for, do you think people are going to use that? Will they do that? Will they not do that? Rather than could I build it? But I think honestly, you can't keep up. And I think if you try, you'll kind of burn out. I think you want to have, 8, 9, 10 sort of key sources you go to so that you're across most of the big things that are happening. But I think the other thing is just to be open-minded and talk to people. I mean, you will know 3 things that I don't know, and I'll probably know 3 that you don't know.
You're very optimistic.
No, I guarantee you. And we'll have that conversation. And I think, the worst thing you can ever do is pretend that you have all the answers and you know everything. And people who want to appear smart like to do that. But you can't, it's moving way too fast. I was literally in a plane, half of last week, and you land and enormous things have happened. So, and then I think just, probably more important than that is just play with all the tools. When you see that someone's launched something, just go have a little play. You don't need to spend a long time on it, but spend half an hour so that you understand how it works and how you use it.
I think going out to play is a perfect spot to end this. I want to thank David Jones, the founder and CEO of Brandtech Group. David, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.